the first 5 pages talks about the discovery of the Philippines. And it's placed there, who discovered the Philippines? Magellan. Son of a bitch. Where did he come from? We were already good as a nation. To my country, conquered it, subjugated it, and made the Filipinos a slave for 300 years, and you want me to celebrate the anniversary of the coming of that idiot here? So ayaw ko, kayo lang. Kasi wanted a grand, because it coincides. Pagdating kasi ng barko ng buang na Magellan na yun, anong inidiskarga niya? Cannon, muskets, and then religion. Tanungin ninyo si Ibasco, yung chief of staff ko pariyan, historian yan. The first, yung subjugation na maging, pag hindi ka nagsimba noon, 50 lashes sa plaza.
One of the kings with whom Magellan forged a close friendship was Raja Humabon of the small island of Limasawa. Humabon was a rival of one of the chiefs on Mactan Island, Lapu-Lapu. Another chief in Mactan, Datu Zula, was also wary of Lapu-Lapu. Pigafetta writes.
On Friday, April 26, Zula, a chief of the island of Mactan, sent one of his sons to present 2 goats to the Captain General, and to say that he would send him all that he had promised, but that he had not been able to send it to him because of the other chief Lapu-Lapu, who refused to obey the King of Spain.
Because of this, Magellan promised to eliminate the king, Lapu-Lapu, who would not recognize the superiority of Spanish crown. According to Pigafetta, they arrived at the shores of Mactan 3 hours before sunrise. Magellan sent a message to the natives saying that if they still refused to recognize the Spanish king and pay them tribute, they would demonstrate how effective their swords were at wounding people. In reply, Lapu-Lapu's men told Magellan that although the Spaniards had lances, they too were armed with bamboo and stakes hardened with fire. Who is Antonio Pigafetta? Antonio Pigafetta, born in 1491 and died in 1531, was a Venetian scholar and explorer. He joined the expedition to the Spice Islands led by explorer Ferdinand Magellan under the flag of King Charles I of Spain. During the expedition, he served as Magellan's assistant and kept an accurate journal. Pigafetta was one of the 18 men who returned to Spain in 1522.
Antonio Pigafetta, Italian scholar, traveled with Magellan and wrote that Mindoro possessed great skill in mixing gold with other metals and gave it natural and perfect appearance that could deceive the best of silversmiths. The natives were also known for jewelries made of other precious stones, of Tarshish and Ophir. And this matches scripture from one of the Ophir-Tarshish passages we discussed. Jeremiah 10:9 says, "Silver spread into plates is brought from Tarshish, and gold from Upaz, which we know as the gold of Pisan, which surrounds the river that surrounds Havilah, which is Ophir and Philippines. The work of the workman and of the hands of the founder. Blue and purple is their clothing." Blue and purple. They are all the work of cunning men. Quite a description. Are you starting to get the hint yet? This ties Tarshish, Ophir as the land of Upaz, which we learned was the gold of the Pison River, which is the river that flows from Eden. There is more here, though. These are the same cunning men, workmen, described by Pigafetta regarding the Philippines as Tarshish and Ophir. But what about this purple and blue clothing? Seems like an odd way to describe a people. Wouldn't they have changed this over the years? Is there an historical link to the Philippines and a significant showing of blue and purple clothing? We'll show you an actual illustration in a minute. But first, the Spanish actually described the Filipino, Ophirian, in detail. Antonio de Morga, 1609, writes, "About their necks they wear gold necklaces, wrought like spun wax, and with links in our fashion, some larger than others. On their arms they wear armlets and wrought gold, which they call calambigas, and which are very large and made in different patterns. Some wear strings of precious stones, cornelians and agates, and other blue and white stones, which they esteem highly. They wear around the legs some strings of these stones, and certain cords covered with black pitch in many foldings as garters." And now for the illustrations. Here are some of the pages of the Boxer Codex from 1595. First, notice these are not barbarians. This is a sophisticated, wealthy society. Look at all the gold they were wearing. Look at the Philippines today. Can you explain to us how exactly the Spanish, U.S., Holy Roman Catholic Empire helped that country move forward? Jesus said you would know a false prophet, a sheep in wolf's clothing, by its fruits. That's Matthew 7:15-20. What fruit does this demonstrate? Oh yeah, do you notice any blue and purple? As we have said before, the facts that have come together in every element of this history of Ophir, Tarshish, and Sheba always lead to the Philippines. Other than a choice few Filipinos like Jose Rizal, how could this have been ignored for so long? Also, do these people look Japanese? No. Chinese? No. Spanish? No. They are clearly 100% Filipinos. Yet, there are actually historians who try to claim Ophir is elsewhere in the Orient. Nope. Only one place fits: Philippines. These must all be royalty, though, right? Wrong. Look at the native commoners in the middle of your screen. Still pretty decked in gold. Note the Cagayan woman and the Visayas couple. They're not royalty either. They're not identified as so. But could that just be an oversight? Guido de Laverzaris, in 1574, documents, "There are some chiefs in this island who have on their persons 10 or 12,000 ducats worth of gold in jewels, to say nothing of the lands, slaves, and mines that they own." These people were wealthy. There are so many of these chiefs that they are innumerable. You can't count them. Likewise, the individual subjects of these chiefs have a great quantity of the said jewels of gold, which they wear on their persons, bracelets, chains, and earrings of solid gold, daggers of gold, and other very rich trinkets. These are generally seen among them. And not only the chiefs and free men have plenty of these jewels, but even slaves possess and wear golden trinkets upon their persons openly and freely. So everyone had much gold and wealth, the regular common man and even the slaves. These don't sound like the kind of slaves, by the way, that we hear about in the U.S. who are wearing chains and being whipped and beaten. Even they possess wealth. Slaves are referenced in the Bible, but also sound nothing like the slave trade we hear about in America either. The Spanish documented this wealth, and then somehow it disappeared, leaving what some refer to today as a third world country of the Philippines. How does this happen? In this island, there are many gold mines, some of which have been inspected by the Spaniards, who say that the natives work them as is done in Nueva España, with the mines of silver. And as in these mines, the vein of ore here is continuous. Essays have been made, yielding so great wealth that I shall not endeavor to describe them, lest I be suspected of lying. Time will prove the truth. Hernando Riquel, on the island of Luzon, 1574. Of course, these quotes and maps and directions and illustrations and hieroglyphics are nice, but where is the physical evidence? Well, they do kind of count as that, but wouldn't we find especially some of this pictured gold jewelry if it existed? Oh, we're glad you asked.
Sa paglipas ng mga taon, ang mga sinaunang ginto na nahukay sa Surigao ay nauwi sa kamay ng mga dealer at palihim na naibenta sa mga maperang kolektor. Ang iba ay napunta pa nga sa ibang bansa.
Some of these gold objects had found their way in European collections already.
Men and women both wore jewelry. Actually, the men...
Si Dr. Florina Baker ang dating direktor at curator ng Gold of Ancestors ng Ayala Museum. Sa tansya raw ng mga eksperto, ang makalaglag pangang gintong nahukay ni Berto ay hinubog noong ika-10 hanggang ika-13 siglo. Ibig sabihin, ginawa ang mga alahas 300 taon bago pa man napadpad si Magellan sa Pilipinas. Ani Baker, marami na raw siyang nakitang hukay na ginto o archaeological gold mula sa Pilipinas, pero walang hihigit pa sa kasalukuyang exhibit.
Nothing of this scale and magnitude and magnificence has ever been seen.
Isuot ang sacred thread para madama ang bigat nito.
Itong tinatawag na sacred thread, ang pinakaimportanteng pyesa ng gold collection ng Ayala Museum. Halos 4 na kilo ang timbang nitong gintong sablay. Wow! Uy, napakabigat. Uy, magkakakalo ka nito. Ang bigat.
Pero higit pa sa bigat ng solid gold na sablay, humanga ako sa pagkakagawa nito. 3 iba-ibang layer ng ginto na may kani-kaniyang disenyo ang pinagpatong-patong sa pamamagitan ng pinong-pinong pagkakahabi ng sablay. Ang mga pampalamuting bolitas na ito, hindi na raw ginagawa ngayon. Ubod ng pulido ang pagkakagawa ng sablay at lalong kamangha-manghang isiping ginawa ito 1,000 taon na ang nakakaraan. Tunay ngang walang kaparis ang Surigao Treasure. At sa aming pagbabalik, sasariwain natin ang kalidad at antas ng yaman, kaalaman at pamumuhay ng ating mga ninuno nang una silang masilayan ni Magellan.
And where did this gold come from? When the Spanish arrived, the Philippines was so gilded with gold that most of the gold mines had been neglected. The natives proceed more slowly in this and content themselves with what they already possess in jewels and gold ingots handed down from antiquity, ancient times, and inherited from their ancestors. This is considerable, for he must be poor and wretched who has no gold chains, calambegas, and earrings. Again, who had this gold and jewelry wealth? Everyone, not just the royal class, which was innumerable, by the way, not a small group that led the country, no. And it was handed down from their ancestors, not necessarily forged in that era, as the gold mines were neglected. One actually stood out as poor if they did not have gold and jewels on their person. The mines had been neglected, meaning they had enough gold from their ancestors, and gold was not in demand among Filipinos, Ophirians. Can you imagine this? Isn't this the same as the Boxer Codex? The Boxer Codex actually helped to date and ID many pieces that were discovered in Surigao. However, this only dates when the gold was worn in the picture. It could have been 2,000 years old, passed through several generations. And how do archaeologists decide the gold could be dated? Gold cannot be tested and dated, but they matched it with the pottery found with it. That doesn't tell us when the gold was mined and forged. This does show a timestamp, however, of when the gold items were last owned, though. The gold could still have been past 4 centuries, and according to history, it was. We don't have time today, but look up the breastplate the high priest of the temple wore in Israel. Could this sacred thread be similar? Was it made in the Philippines for Solomon? Is there a connection with this scripture? Daniel 10:5. Then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Upas. Again, we know Upas is the gold of the Pisan River, which surrounds ancient Havilah, which became Ophir after the flood and is modern-day Philippines. You got to see our part 10, Where is the River from Eden? We prove this. Did Daniel see something similar to this sacred thread from the Philippines or the belt of fine gold worn here? We do know that Philippine gold has been found in ancient Egypt. Gold jewelry of Philippine origin has been found in 1st century Egypt. What? How is this possible? This is confirmed from 3 different sources. Could it be that Cebu, which we covered, was spelled with an S and SH in history? Shebu is the same meaning as Sheba. But could it be that this ancient Egypt tie has a link here? On the left, pictured, is a necklace from the Philippines from the Surigao treasure find, dated at least back to the 10th to 13th centuries. Again, we believe it is much older than that. Notice how similar it is to the Shebu collar. Wait, the Egyptians called their collar Shebu? The ancient name of the kingdom of Cebu, Sheba? Yes. Let's take another look at the Boxer Codex illustrations and see what it shows. Every person pictured here in this illustration is wearing a necklace similar to the Egyptian Shebu collar. Is this merely a coincidence, or is Shebu, the Shebu collar, actually named after its place of origin? Shebu, Cebu, Sheba. So, when the Bible references Solomon's navy returning from Ophir with 420 talents of gold in Kings and Chronicles, a talent, by the way, is 75 to 150 pounds depending on the unit of measurement. This would have been over 30 tons of gold. We know Solomon's ships may have been able to carry up to 600 tons, so certainly were adequate for the journey. Where is the sophisticated mining equipment, though? It would have required very sophisticated equipment to dig into the mountains deep for gold, right? Says Pigafetta, Magellan's historian on the Raja of Butuan. Pieces of gold the size of walnuts and eggs are found by sifting the earth in the island Mindanao of that king, Butuan, who came to our ships. All the dishes of that king are of gold, and also some portion of his house, as we were told by that king himself. He had a covering of silk on his head and wore 2 large golden earrings fastened in his ears. At his side hung a dagger, the haft of which was somewhat long and all of gold, and its scabbard of carved wood. He had 3 spots of gold on every tooth, and his teeth appeared as if bound with gold. Wow! Gold nuggets the size of walnuts and golden are chicken eggs, basically. Wow! Found by sifting through the earth? This doesn't denote the need to dig deep into the mountain. It sounds as if this gold was nearer to the surface. This is why this place is so special. Even today, there is gold mining taking place all over the Philippine archipelago. Okay, hold on a minute. Before we wrap up, haven't we all been taught that people came to the Philippines from the other Pacific islands? Wouldn't that dispel a lot of this? If it were true, it would. But a new study has been released by the American National Academy of Sciences that actually disproves that. It declares Philippines is the most likely ancestral homeland of the Polynesians, whose forebears colonized the Pacific about 3,200 years ago. Polynesian chickens had their genetic roots in the Philippines. Through chicken migration patterns, and chickens do not island hop on their own without human intervention, by the way, scientists have proven the Polynesian roots are in the Philippines. But that's not all. Even more significant, a team of archaeologists led by Dr. Armand Mijares of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, has confirmed that a foot bone they discovered in Calao Cave in Cagayan Province was at least 67,000 years old. Taban Man's, Palawan, remains were a relatively young 50,000 years old. So far, this could be the earliest human fossil found in the Asia-Pacific region. The presence of humans in Luzon shows these early humans already possessed knowledge of seacraft making in this early period, Majars told GMA News. Let us be clear, scientific methods for dating bones are highly, highly suspect. We recommend you prove this for yourself. We do not believe that they have even a remote ballpark as far as the actual dating, because there is no such thing as accurate carbon dating, and scientists have no idea what the atmosphere and ecosystem were like before the flood. And scientists admit that they cannot accurately date any fossil that has been underwater, which would be the entire world. But we do believe they can say Kaleo man is the oldest and Taban man is pretty ancient, more ancient than any other human bones found in the Pacific Islands. That is safe to say. Here is the real question, however. What if they actually found bones of men who lived in the day of Adam's generations prior to the flood in the Philippines? One other thing this news story confirms is that man was boating in ancient times. We feel very strongly that this information is credible, as even when quoting websites we try to review the original source, just as we do oftentimes with Wikipedia. This was quite an historic journey, but one every Filipino should venture. Share this with everyone. There is much more that we could have included in this video. In fact, we will be making some hypotheses based on history as to which general areas of the Philippines belong to the area of Ophir, of Sheba, and of Tarshish. We will need the next segment, however, to pull it all together. As for part 7, we are following the Hebrew trail of the Philippines, which is powerful. Part 8, not Ophir, will expose the claims of other areas saying they are Ophir, Tarshish, and Sheba. And there is not one coherent claim outside of the Philippines. Part 9, Prophecy of Ophir, where Jesus and others in the Bible speak of the future of the Philippines, and this will surprise many people. And part 10, which will blow your mind, Where is the River from Eden? Takes you all the way back to the history of the Philippines in the most ancient of times.
Anyway, what Ferdinand Marcos did was he took the world's gold. I was explaining what is the world's gold. It's gold from King Solomon. It's gold.
Where's the gold? A lot of people, some people believe that